life safety is such an important part of every commercial property inspection. And it actually begins as you enter the property or drive upon the property. The first thing we're looking at as an inspector is what we describe as fire access road, which is really our entrance or our access. In some buildings, it might be a separate entrance for fire. In others, it's the main entrance. What we're looking for is to make sure it's unobstructed, it's clear, it's marked, it doesn't have cars parked in it. It's really important as an inspector to put yourself in that mindset of that emergency services person. So as you're pulling up, you want to make sure that that access for your apparatus is clear and well intended. Beyond that, there are three really critical elements of the CompSop that really should begin every inspection. First and foremost, every building you inspect should have a very clear marking or indication of its property number. In fact, what we're looking for is to make sure that number is in contrast with the rest of the building. In this particular building, we see that 6333 is clearly marked. 6333 is clearly marked on the front of this building in a contrasting color. You have to imagine that that fire apparatus coming up to the property may have never been here before. And they need to know exactly where they're heading. By having that number, that's very critical. In some cases, that critical number might not be located on the building. It might be located, especially on buildings that are offset from the road, out at the main street. And that too should be labeled with the building number. Not necessarily the name of the building, but the building address is what we're looking for. So the two places that number could be located is here on the building, especially if the building is seen from the street. But if the building is offset from the street, let's say it's got some meandering parkway that drives up from the main road, then out at the main road, you will find that building number on a sign, critical for that emergency vehicle to see as they're pulling up to the property. Within the fire access road, there's one more item that is a little bit different than what you might think of, but a very critical safety item as well, and that's anything overhead. You have to imagine that fire apparatus has to pull up to the property. So what we're looking for is any obstruction or any impediment that is overhead. That could be, in this case, a canopy. That could be an overhead wire. That could be that archway that goes across the entrance of some buildings. And what we're looking for is having a height of at least 13 foot 6 inches. You need to double check that on every inspection that has anything overhead on that fire access road. So in this case, where we have 14 foot 4 inches, that's fabulous. That's greater than 13.6, and that's what we're looking for. And then lastly, after we've looked at all those things, we'll look at the fire hydrants. So let's go take a look at a fire hydrant now. Within the CompSop, we are required to not necessarily inspect fire hydrants, but actually to inspect access to fire hydrants. What we're looking for is to make sure that we have 3 foot clearance around all fire hydrants for the property. So in this case, like so many other properties, the landscaping has consumed this fire hydrant to make it semi-inaccessible. So it's very important during your inspections to review and inspect the surrounding area around fire hydrants and make sure that we do have 3 foot of access. How do you identify the fire access road? The fire access road and the identification of it is very important to a commercial property inspection. First, it might be the road you drove in on. That might be your access point from the main road up to the building. Or it might be a secondary entrance that's been clearly marked with signs, and those signs help direct a fire department to the building. But beyond that, as we're looking at the building, you need to look around the building to see where that access is. Is this where we're standing, the fire access? Or is that the fire access as it goes up to the building? Well, in order to understand that, we have to understand a little bit about a couple of rules. One of the first and important rules is your fire access road actually encompasses every entrance to the building to allow a fire apparatus or like an emergency vehicle, an ambulance, to be within 50 foot of every entrance. And so when we're looking at that, while somebody might drive a fire apparatus or a truck or something here, they're actually going to want to be up near the building. And so what we're looking for, again, is to make sure that within 50 foot of that entrance, we do have those clearances. And those clearances include the canopies, making sure we have at least 13 foot 6 inches of overhead clearance. Let's look at one more number that might be important for fire access. The second important number to understand with fire access roads is that we need to have access to the exterior of the building around all portions of the exterior of at least 150 foot. So you don't have to measure this, but just understand that the entire perimeter within 150 foot of the building needs to be accessible by that piece of emergency equipment. So that could, in your mind as an inspector, include the projection of any landscaping, anything that goes away from the building. We are still within our fire access road if we're within 150 foot of the building.